Within the animal kingdom, many animals were once much larger than they are today. This isn't always surprising, since plenty of animals are still huge even now. But there are a few modern creatures that seem almost harmless at first glance, and yet their ancestors were absolute giants. In some cases, these ancient versions were among the biggest animals in their entire ecosystems. And the contrast can be hard to believe, because their living relatives are often small enough to fit in your hands, hide in a burrow, or disappear into the grass. So today, we're looking at a handful of tiny animals that once had giant ancestors. Frogs today are usually small, fragile, and easy to overlook. Even the biggest living species, like the Goliath frog, is impressive mainly because it's large for a frog, but it still isn't something most people wouldn't consider intimidating. However, millions of years ago, there was a frog that completely changed what a frog could be. This animal was called Beelzebufo, often nicknamed the devil frog. It lived in what is now Madagascar during the late Cretaceous. Unlike modern frogs that rely on quick escapes, Beelzebufo was built like a squat, armored ambush predator. Its skull was thick and wide, and its jaws were massive for an amphibian. Some estimates suggest it could have reached over 40 centimeters long and weighed around 10 pounds or more, making it far larger than most frogs alive today. But the scariest part wasn't just the size, it was the bite. Based on its skull structure, researchers believe that Beelzebufo may have had a bite force strong enough to grab and hold struggling prey, including small reptiles and possibly even hatchling dinosaurs. A frog that could eat baby dinosaurs sounds ridiculous, but when you look at its head shape and jaw power, it becomes much easier to believe. And if a frog like that still existed today, it would instantly become one of the most feared animals in its environment. When most people think of mice, they think of tiny animals that survive by staying hidden. They're prey for almost everything, and they're so small that even a house cat can look like an apex predator next to them. But rodents have been around for a long time, and some ancient ones reach sizes that feel completely wrong. One of the best examples is Jose Fortigacia, a prehistoric rodent that lived in South America during the Pliocene. This was not a mouse in the normal sense. It was essentially a rodent scaled up to a size that belonged in a different world. Estimates suggest that Jose Fortigacia may have weighed close to a ton, making it one of the largest rodents to ever exist. To put that into perspective, many capybaras are the largest living rodents, and even they are usually topping out around 150 pounds. Jose Fortigacia may have been several times heavier than that, with a skull that looked more like it belonged to a large herbivore than a rodent. Its teeth were still rodent teeth, meaning it had massive front incisors that could bite through tough vegetation. But if an animal like this ever felt threatened, those same teeth would have been extremely dangerous. Even today, smaller rodents can cause serious injuries with a bite. So imagining one the size of a cow is definitely unsettling. And while giant rodents are already strange enough, the next animal takes that small today, massive before contrast into the ocean. Crabs today come in all sizes, but most people picture the typical shoreline crab. Small, quick, and more annoying than dangerous. Even the larger species are usually treated as something you'd see in a seafood restaurant, rather than something you'd fear. But deep in Earth's history, there were arthropods related to crabs that reached sizes that would be horrifying to encounter. One of the most famous examples is Echolopterus, a type of sea scorpion that lived roughly 390 million years ago. Sea scorpions weren't true crabs, but they were still armored aquatic arthropods with claws and segmented bodies. And Echolopterus may have been the largest of them all. Based on fossil remains, scientists estimate it could have grown to over 8 feet long. That is not a big crab. That is an underwater predator bigger than a human, and unlike modern crabs that mostly scavenge, sea scorpions were active hunters. Echolopterus had large grasping claws, strong swimming limbs, and the kind of body plan built for ambushing prey in shallow waters. It likely hunted fish and other animals that lived near the bottom, and it would have been one of the dominant predators in its environment. Thankfully though, nothing like that is alive today. But the fact that it existed at all shows how extreme arthropods can become under the right conditions. And speaking of modern animals with terrifying reputations, the next one is small today, but used to be much worse. Piranhas are famous for their teeth. Even though most species are not as dangerous as pop culture suggests, they still have a reputation as vicious little predators. The largest piranha species alive today, the red-bellied piranha, can reach around 20 inches in length. That's not tiny, but it's still small enough that most people could imagine dealing with one. However, millions of years ago, South America had a piranha that was on a completely different level. This fish was called megapiranha, and it lived around 9 million years ago. Megapiranha may have grown to roughly 3 feet long, possibly more depending on the estimate. And even if the largest size estimates are debated, a piranha that long is already a problem. With a bigger body came more robust head and jaw structure. Studies have suggested that it might have had a bite force far beyond modern piranhas, strong enough to crack through hard materials. This includes things like turtle shells, armored fish, and even thick bone. That has led researchers to believe it could have hunted prey that modern piranhas simply couldn't handle. And while some scientists think it may have also eaten plants at times, the fact remains that it was a heavily armed fish with the ability to do serious damage. If modern piranhas are unsettling, mega piranha would have been something else entirely, and it wasn't the only ancient animal whose size would make modern versions seem almost harmless. Otters today are often seen as cute animals. They play, they swim, and they're known for holding hands while floating in the water. But beneath that reputation, otters are still predators. They have sharp teeth, strong jaws, and can be surprisingly aggressive. Some living species, like the giant otter, can already grow quite large. And yet, prehistoric otters managed to take that to an extreme. The largest genus of otter ever discovered was an Hydriodon, a massive mustelid that lived in parts of Africa and Asia between roughly 10 and 2 million years ago. One species in particular, an Hydriodon homoensis, may have reached weights over 400 pounds, making it comparable in size to a lion. That alone is enough to make it one of the most intimidating otters imaginable. But it gets even stranger. Some evidence suggests this animal may have not been a fully aquatic hunter like many modern otters. Instead, it may have spent a significant amount of time on land, behaving more like a terrestrial predator or scavenger. Its teeth were built for crushing, and its molars were well developed. It may have had the ability to break bones, similar to animals like hyenas. And with its size, it could have taken down prey far larger than anything a modern otter would attempt. It's also possible that early primates lived alongside this massive otter, and while there's no direct evidence that it hunted them, the idea is still unsettling. But even a lion-sized otter isn't the most extreme example of a small modern animal that once had giant relatives, because the last animal on this list looks harmless today, but used to be the size of a vehicle. Armadillos today are known for their armor. They're small, tough, and usually more concerned with digging than fighting. Most species are small enough to pick up, and even the largest living armadillo is still nowhere near the size of the truly ancient giants. For millions of years, South America was home to enormous armored relatives of armadillos, called glyptodonts. These animals were built like living tanks, covered in thick bony plates called osteoderms. Some glyptodont species reach sizes comparable to small cars, and among the biggest was Steroids, a massive armored mammal that could weigh over 2 tons and stretch more than 11 feet long. Its body was protected by a dome-like shell, and it also had armor on its head and tail. But the most dangerous feature was at the very end of that tail. Steroids had a heavy club-like weapon, sometimes described as a spiked wrecking ball, and it wasn't just for show. Studies suggest that it could swing this tail with enough speed and force to break bones and deliver devastating impacts. This meant that even large predators would have to think twice before attacking it, and despite its massive size, it may have been capable of moving more effectively than you'd expect, with some researchers even suggesting it could rear up slightly depending on its center of mass. Eventually, glyptodonts disappeared, likely due to a mix of climate change and human hunting, and while modern armadillos are still fascinating, they are nothing compared to the giants that once walked the continent. And that wraps it up for the video. There are many more animals that were once far larger than their living relatives. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. Until next time on Fossil Flicks.